Welcome, everyone, to Talking Textiles. I'm Jonathan Sweet, Director of Content and Member Programs at ATA. The goal of this podcast is to get to know the wide variety of positions and markets that make the advanced textiles world turn. We'll be talking to professionals in different roles throughout this series to help inspire the next generation of textile professionals and anyone interested in learning about others' journey in the world of textiles. ATA offers advanced textiles content throughout the year, including the upcoming Advanced Textiles Expo 2025, taking place November 4th through 7th in Indianapolis, Indiana. See the latest innovations from top companies in the textiles industry and participate in education sessions taught by experts. Visit textiles.org/events to learn more. Today I'm joined by Antone, Dan McGowan, and Kyle Richardson. And now, let's talk textiles. Today, we are talking about textile industry podcasts. Our featured guests include podcaster Kyle Richardson of L&A Tent Rentals and host of Under the Vinyl, along with Antone and Dan McGowan of TVF and hosts of the Textile Nerd. Kyle, Lori, Dan, glad to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I think a good place to start is if we talk a little bit about how you all got involved in the textile industry and how you came to be working in this great industry we're all in. Kyle, why don't you start us out?
So I was actually born into it. I tried to get out right after college, and my dad suckered me back in within a year. So it's kind of been in my blood, in the family for my whole life. It's kind of all I've ever really known, and you come to love it. So even when you try to leave, it sucks you back in.
Lori, how about you?
I kind of fell into this industry about a little over 8 years ago. My background was in education, and it just kind of dropped out of the sky. And it was at a time in my life where I felt like, oh, this is kind of an interesting move. And I started out as a textile development coordinator, so completely out of my realm of things I knew about, but I'm a learner. And I just kind of took the approach of, like you're dropped into a foreign country and you can't speak the language and you just are like complete immersive. Basically, I just completely dove into it. I was lucky to be working with, people that had worked in the industry for, 30 plus years. Robert Hinch was someone that I worked really closely with in industrial textiles. And I stayed really late and I did all my own, kind of research and yeah. And then as Kyle has said, the more I learned, the more interesting it got. So that's my background.
Great, thank you. Dan, what about you?
For me, it was all about connections. A friend of mine got hired at TVF, or a former colleague actually, who became a friend, had an opening. I recommended several other people for the opening. My personal situation changed and started working at TVF that way. I've been here a little over, actually almost 3 years. So I'm relatively new to textiles, but my background involved journalism. I was a radio producer for a long time. I was a business reporter for a while, and then got into public relations with trade organizations. So things that I've done in the past nipped around the edge of textiles, but being fully immersed in it, that sort of came through connections.
Great, thank you. Now, of course, our topic today is podcasts, podcast about podcasts. Would love to talk about how you guys got started and decided to do a podcast. So I think maybe I'll start with the folks from TVF first. What prompted you guys to start the podcast, and how long have you been doing this now?
Well, I'll jump in first just in terms of how it got started. I mean, something like, as I said in my intro, just the idea that the industry is very interesting, and the more you learn, the more interesting it gets. And so back in the beginning, I had everything I learned. I had my office, I would just sort of put it on my door as this interactive, like I learned something about foam or something about vinyl, and I would just put my little learning thing, like a 3D almost montage on my door, just as this kind of way for me to express it. And I remember just thinking, the more I did it, the more interesting it got. And I thought it was very hard for me personally to learn. It took a lot of effort to learn stuff, like, the vocabulary, I did all my research, and there's a lot out there, but it's not necessarily that engaging. And I felt like, wow, there's a real opportunity to make this more engaging. And so that was sort of like the seed. And then when Dan, came on board, we just are totally compatible. And we kind of just, this idea sort of, let's actually make it a reality. Plus his background was something that we could do. And we sort of wanted to do something different. So our podcast is highly edited and it's very short, sort of newsy, NPR-ish sound bites with our banter. And it's a little bit different than other podcasts. So that's sort of the inception. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dan.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And I think the other part of it was too, just in conversations, Lori and I felt like we had sort of a show going when we talked to each other. So it just felt natural and it felt like an extension. And anytime you talk with somebody about creating a podcast or whatever, anybody around the office, they seemed highly interested in the concept of it. And so it just seemed like something that had legs, and it started with like a mock-up almost. Can we do something like this? That mock-up sounded nice, and we moved on from there. And just, any curiosity sort of jumps out into, sticks in the back of our brain, and we'll try to pursue it through this podcast too.
All right. Kyle, how about you? How long have you been doing the podcast, and what got you started on this idea?
So it really kind of took off at ATA's tent conference this year, sitting around a bar. Me and my co-host, there's one other gentleman who does it with me. His name's Nate. He kind of came and he's like, we got to do this. And I was like, all right. So the next week we were recording our first podcast, and we didn't know where we were going to go with it when we originally started. We kind of have a vision now. Our goal is to reach the people who are just starting in the industry or who've been doing it for 3, 4, 5 years. And they're wondering, where can I go from here? A lot of times companies don't give the career path to the lower staff members, the installers in the tent field or guys in the warehouse. So we were trying to bring on guests who started at the bottom and have now worked their way up through the industry. And they might own their own company now, or they're running large companies, things like that. So we're trying to get the stories out of the older generation and give them to the younger generation in order to help them kind of grow in this industry, because labor, obviously, and people, just workforce in general, is a general challenge in our industry. So anything we can do to advocate that this can be a career and is not just a job for the next 3 months or 3 years. So that's really our main goal with it.
Certainly listening to your podcast, like you said, the audience seems to be those other owners of event companies or tent companies, tent installers. Is that what you initially thought it was going to be? You kind of talked about it may have changed a little bit. Is that where you thought you were going to go?
I think our main goal was to reach just the installer, but now we're realizing we're reaching the smaller tent companies or even the large tent companies, the owners, and it's kind of putting good ideas in their heads about what they can do with their staff. So we never really thought we'd get to them, but we're finding with feedback we're getting that they're actually the ones who are listening and then taking this stuff that we're saying to their staff members, which is good to hear.
Lori and Dan, how about you guys? When you launched it, who did you intend to reach? And is that the same group that you find is listening now?
At launch, initially, it was nebulous, to be honest. It wasn't, we had no idealized listener other than the industry, other than people that are in it. And so we've always taken the approach of, what would somebody that works here want to listen to? What would somebody really in anything, somebody that's unloading some fabric somewhere, what would they want to hear? Somebody that's driving their car to the office, what would they want to hear? Somebody that's out on a job site and has a 20-minute lunch break that they could break off for, what would they want to hear? It's a little less of an idealized caricature of who we'd want and more about what they would want, what we think somebody would want to listen to. So it's all about topicality. And turns out we're finding that it's really all walks that have listened to our podcast and in the world. I hope and I would think a lot of ATA members listen to it, and I think it's a very wide swath is what it's turned out to be so far.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, and by the way, I think, when did we start ours, Dan? Like year and a half ago-ish?
Yeah, right around there. Was Halloween of 23.
So we're coming up to the 2-year mark. But I think
Yeah.
our idea was make it engaging, feature people who are very passionate about the industry, have knowledge, and are really nice, like authentic, passionate, nice, knowledgeable people. And that whatever their story will sort of sell itself. And our other idea was just to make it short so that because the learning issue is sort of an issue. Like I am a big podcast consumer. I like podcasts. I walk my dog and listen to podcasts. I'm sort of like that person who ingests a lot. But a lot of people, they can't find the time to fit it in. And so our thing was just make it short. What's our little tagline? I forgot what it is.
Exploring textile curiosities without wasting your time.
Yeah. So it's just kind of keep it short, keep it engaging. A lot of times our guests will sit down, we'll talk to them for an hour, but then we'll basically extract, okay, what was the main thing, the main topic that we want to spotlight, but we might take, sometimes many people, let's say, weave in, pun intended, let's say sustainability as a concept. Everyone's interested in it. Everyone has a different take on it. So they might mention that, and then we'll sort of extract that for a different episode and maybe combine with that. But it's really just this idea of trying to create something engaging that snags people's interest, and maybe someone that wasn't that interested in textiles initially, it might hook them, and then they get interested, and then it starts that path into the industry. So we have this very big mindset of abundance where all of us, that's why we were really thrilled to be on this podcast, because we love the ATA's Talking Textiles podcast, listen to yours, Kyle. And it's just like, it's all of us can fit into this space. And the more people that do it, the better. That just can just increase the interest in the industry.
One thing that I found interesting, I think, both of you have in common on your podcast is that you have two people, Kyle, as you said, as a partner working with him, and in both cases, you have a really good rapport. How important do you think that is to the success of your podcast, having that second person that if you're not friends, you guys are faking it well?
I think it's pretty important. I'm fortunate that me and Nate are really good friends. We probably talk 5 times a day, and we talk on the phone for an hour every day, probably. I think it does make it much easier to do them when you do have that rapport. So I think it is a big part of making it a success.
I agree. I feel like it's not everything, but I feel like it's definitely a differentiator. It's an opportunity to kind of bring others in on the conversations that we're already having. And also, I think personality wise too, and I think this runs through your podcast too, Kyle. You're one, and I know we certainly are, you let the experts tell their story. And that's what we're trying to get. It's not a show about us in any aspect, in any respect. We are featuring the experts, and we're letting the experts be experts and showcase the very finest of what they know and what they can do.
Yeah, I completely agree with everyone. I mean, I think Dan and I are friends. We get along great. We have comparable, or not comparable, but like complementary skill sets. So, he has a background in kind of this industry and was a reporter and did a bunch of stuff. And we truly like each other, get along. We were both in Japan recently. When was that, Dan?
End of April. And we
April.
actually we met up just by chance. We
Yeah.
met in Japan.
We were on the same train actually. And
yeah.
and then we went and of course had a bowl of ramen and drank a beer and, in Tokyo. But yeah, we really like each other, and I think and we have different skill sets. So I think that whole thing, it makes it a lot easier. It's not a deal breaker if you don't have that. But I mean, I almost think if you're going to launch a podcast, go for it. And then, because sometimes like this podcast where you guys have different hosts each time, that's another interesting, different way of doing it. So I think if the person was by themselves, they can figure out a way to connect with their guest, and that can work too. But it is nice. It's fun also. Makes it fun to have someone that you really like to work with, and we brainstorm and come up with stuff and make each other laugh, which is always fun.
So what has been the reaction I guess from everybody, from customers, colleagues, other companies. What kind of feedback have you guys gotten on your podcasts?
I mean, I think we have, in general, we've gotten a lot of great reviews. The people within our company, people, a lot of the experts, they really love it because there is an authentic, like deep dive into the industry and trying to really showcase the industry, but also the fun part of it. And yeah, our listenership keeps growing steadily. So it's pretty cool, actually. Our guests seem to have fun on our podcast. So I don't know, Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the highest compliments that we've been paid is that some of the folks we work with share the podcast with customers and say, "Hey, we were talking about this topic. Here's the podcast on it." And to me, that's sort of the highest honor that, we call ourselves nerds. We like to talk to fellow nerds, and to have, I mean this with all due respect to those that are sharing, other nerds sharing with other nerds. It's nice that there's that it's sort of elevated enough, the experience, the listening experience is elevated enough that it adds value to other conversations.
Yeah, so with ours, we're getting a lot of feedback. We missed a week because we were busy and our phones got blown up by people wondering what happened, making sure we were still doing the podcast. But the coolest thing for me is just going to events now. And, someone I might not know walks up to me now and goes, "Hey, you're with Under the Vinyl, right?" And it just creates a conversation that I might not have had we not started the podcast. So that to me is what I like about it. We're getting a lot of great feedback from not only manufacturers who say that they're sending it out to their customers if they have certain questions about things on topic that we discussed or someone mentioned something, but even just fellow rental companies. I get texts all the time saying, "Hey, I really love that episode," or, "Hey, can you ask one of your guests this question?" So I think it's going good.
One more just little snippet related to that, which I thought was really cool, is I think it was at an ATA, or it was at the Women in Textiles event that we went to. We actually go to every year, but at that event, someone came up and said, "I used your podcast for training new employees." So that was very cool. Like, to think like it's short, it's easy to understand, it's engaging. And so we were very happy about that, because that's another great use of it, just like kind of, which is sort of the main thing, is get people engaged and interested in the industry. And if you can use it for that purpose, so I was really happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's great to hear people are interacting in that way, and that you're getting that feedback and that people are enjoying it. We talked a lot about kind of how you guys do things, but maybe I'll throw it to you first, Kyle. What makes for a good podcast guest? What do you feel like has really helped you have that good guest experience?
They have to be willing to share. The host can't drag everything out of the guest. Sometimes you have a great guest who, they answer the question fully and they give a lot of detail and they tell the whole story. And you really don't have to ask that many questions. It kind of just, you ask one question on the podcast, all of a sudden you look down and you're an hour in and you never went through your questionnaire. And other times you're wondering if you're going to make it 40 minutes recording and how you're going to stretch this into a longer episode if that's what you need. So a good guest is someone who can just have a conversation. I've noticed some of them end up getting nervous sometimes, I think. And obviously it's not live, but I think some people just in their head, they get a little nervous and they don't know what to say. So, but just be calm, cool, collected, and it's just like we're having a conversation.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for us, a good guest, and we were really lucky that I think 100% of our guests have been this way, but just authentically passionate about what they're talking about, emitting that passion, just being themselves, and really kind of telling the stories. In our case, we edit it, so it's like there's no worry whatsoever. It's not live, obviously, but it's also, there's no video, and we edit it and we share it before we put it out, so they have that confidence that nothing, because occasionally someone might say something, we think it would be fine, but they don't want that out there for whatever reason, so we definitely make a point of that. But I would just say, that passion, the authenticity, and then the fun. So it just is the whole experience, not just the end result of the product of the podcast, but the experience of talking and connecting was fun and was meaningful. So that's what I think. I don't know, Dan.
Well, I'll push up my glasses and snort here for a second. Like, well, it has to sound good. Like it really does. Like I think sound quality matters, and you can find a million podcasts in the world, and I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of like half of them or more kind of sound like garbage. So it's important to sound good. So we really took some effort, didn't spend a ton of money, but just did enough work to determine what's a baseline, like really good sound for us. And when Lori and I record, we took some technical efforts to make sure that our end sounds good. We, with our guests so far, they've sounded good on their own. If they didn't right away, we've moved them closer to their microphone or whatever. We're also at an advantage where we don't have, advantage, disadvantage, whatever you want to call it. We don't have video. Ours is only audio. So we really do need to make that audio sound great. So that was one side that I don't know that everybody, just based on me listening to podcasts, not everybody seems to pay attention to, is how good it's going to sound. So we really made effort on that. And one of the through lines that Lori said, that Kyle said, and I know that the ATA, the Talking Textiles podcast really pushes, is storytelling. You want to have stories. You can have people, regurgitate facts about things all day, but when you get those stories, that's relatable. When you get stories, that's compelling. When you get stories, it's different. I think oftentimes just having people spit out facts and numbers and figures and whatever. Okay. You can learn something from that, but when you hear stories, you get personality, you get passion, you get all the really good things that come out.
Certainly that's the way we find to be our most successful ones, where we get those people who really just can start telling their story and have an interesting story to tell about how they got into the business, what they're doing with their business, and things hopefully people can learn from. So speaking of learning, what are your tips for someone who wanted to start a podcast? You guys have both gone through this recently. And so thoughts on that? Any advice you would give to people looking to get a podcast going?
I can take this one. I think just do it. Get a, like I said, a baseline of technology going, get a decent microphone and like a little 2-channel input output or whatever that you could plug in your computer. Just start and see how it sounds. If you don't like it, try again. You're going to need a little bit of skill on editing. You can hire that out. I've heard some podcasts that there's 1,000,001 companies out there that will do the work for you if that's your choice. But if you want to do it yourself, you're going to need a little bit of editing skill, be that video editing or audio editing. And, we use the Adobe suite as an example. But again, there's any number of ways to edit, but literally edit where you go through and you clean it up, so to speak, but also edit in terms of writing. I would recommend that people write out intros. They write out their questions. Sometimes if you're not the best reader or whatever, that's fine. But writing it out puts it in your head. It gives you a flow, and it's a little bit more compelling than just winging it every time. And there's a heck of a lot of podcasts that just like to wing it.
I would agree with everything Dan's saying. I'll also add, don't be overzealous and shoot for 1 episode a week right away.
Bingo.
It does get challenging sometimes to get them recorded, or much like you guys, me and my host are not in the same office building. We're both working separate jobs, and trying to schedule around guests and things like that does get challenging. But yeah, we're one of those that hires out our editing that Dan was talking about. We're working on bringing it in-house. As we get slower, we're kind of figuring it out on our own, but we jumped in and then busy season started. So the easiest way was to hire it out. And I'd have to agree on the sound thing. We've had to tell people they can't call in on their cell phones. They can't take it on the side of the freeway, all things like that, because sound does matter a lot.
Yeah, and my 2 cents is probably one of our core values is progress over perfection in our company. And I think that doing it and then learn from your mistakes. And we haven't had, our goal is to have amazing audio, we've had a few that it's like less than amazing, but it's just kind of publish it, move on, and learn from that. So I think that idea of just doing it like you guys said and learning from your mistakes, probably maybe thinking about what angle do you want for the industry. I would suggest start to really research the podcasts that are out there related to textiles. Listen to the Talking Textiles podcast, listen to Kyle's podcast and others that are out there to see like what do you like about those? What could you add sort of so you can be your own little, because again, we can all sort of help each other in this space, and then just kind of contributing to the whole puzzle, and then just yeah, start. And again, like I definitely agree with that, don't take on too much, because it is work, and it's like then it becomes not as fun if you have this burden of, because we all have day jobs, so this is not our main job. So I'd say, take it easy, put out a few maybe before you even publish it, so you have a little bit of backlog, and then do your research and just dive in.
I really like that attitude. I love that progress over perfection. Like you said, you're going to learn from it as you go along. I know, Kyle, you mentioned one thing is maybe not committing yourself to doing one a week, maybe especially during the busy season. But is there anything else that maybe you would have done differently when you're getting started, or anything you wish you had known when you started getting this off the ground?
I probably would have put more in a backlog, like Lori was saying. We do kind of two segments. We do one with a guest, and then we do a tailgate talk, which is usually someone sent in a viewer question or a listener question. So once we get a few questions, then we record an episode and we answer the questions that the people had. I would probably, even if we just had a bunch of those stored up, just to have on the weeks where you just can't get together. Like one week, I know Nate fell sick the day we were supposed to record and his voice was gone. So then there goes the episode for that week. So we were scrambling to get someone in. So I would just plan ahead and try to have a schedule, and even just get your guests lined up a month in advance. So that way you're ready to go and for the next month what you have to do.
I would say early on for us, one of the things on the Textile Nerd podcast that I kind of had, thinking back, I wish, we'd done a little better, is help your guests help promote you. Find ways to let their word spider the word of your podcast out everywhere. Because I mean, one little thing that we have started to do more routinely is we'll send, once the thing's posted, once we're getting ready to launch it, week to 10 days or so before we do, we'll send them the link. We'll send them a picture, a graphic that we've had that, it says Textile Nerd Podcast, download now or whatever. And then we'll even in some cases send them just like a line or two of social media copy that if they want to use it, cool. If not, they don't have to. But the guests promotion, and we've seen this in our download numbers in some cases, that if you've got a very well-connected guest and somebody that's very active on social media, you notice your numbers really jump because of that. Topicality is also a great thing. Make sure you're talking about things that are important. Self-serving topics don't do well. And it doesn't, a lot of the podcast world is focused on, I don't know, stroking egos or touting themselves or something. Whereas I don't think any of ours here are that, but there's plenty of them out there. So it's really focus on the experts and help them help you promote it.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing, I obviously agree with all of that. One of the things we definitely did not want to do is to sell anything. So it was absolutely not to seem like not to sell anything and not to seem like we're selling anything. So that idea was just very big. I think the one other thing is just be really being organized. I think we've gotten, Desiree Friedman is our marketing director, and she kind of keeps us organized. She's our executive producer, so to speak. And so I think the organization part, in the beginning, we weren't as organized. And so now we're a little bit more organized, and like the organization really helps the whole thing. And it helps us, but it also helps our guests. And it's just like kind of becomes more of a well-oiled machine. Not that we we still have things to learn, but that has been a definite positive progression. So
You talked about getting prepped ahead of time, the oil machine, all of that. How far out are you planning your podcast topics and lining up your guests?
I mean, as far as our topics, I don't even know how we have a fairly, we're sort of backlogged in the sense that we'd actually like to, crank out more, but we have a long list of people that we've already sort of connected with and that we have either scheduled or sort of loosely slated for, I don't know, maybe.
I mean, it's almost, in some cases, it's 6 months out. If it's a more like urgent topic, then we'll turn the thing around in a couple of days. But I mean, we really can work, in our case, in some cases, months ahead because of just how we format ours, where, we're pulling, in some cases, 2 or 3 topics out of one guest, or we're combining topics with different guests that we've talked with. It really varies. I mean, it's anywhere from, a more topical thing. We talked about PFAS at one point, and that's such an ever-changing topic that we needed to get that out quicker because the information tends to expire, to, guests that we'll have talked with 6 months ago or more, and we'll play, a part of that in one episode. We'll use another bit of it for another episode. It's all topic dependent, I would say, but you really can calendar things out pretty far in advance, weeks or months, if you really choose to.
Yeah, and then just inserting, like, there's certain times, like, for example, the trade show season, we have very specifically want to promote the trade shows. And so we purposely, schedule and make sure that we have certain ones that we've recorded that are going out right before the trade shows to help that whole thing. So it's kind of like we just want to sort of help everyone in the industry, and then so there's a scheduling thing with that.
So for Under the Vinyl, we're typically 2 weeks ahead. So what we record this week will come out in 2 weeks. Our goal is to be a month by the end of August. But this is all stuff we're learning as we're going now, that staying ahead of it is really what makes you successful. So that way you do have room for hiccups.
Absolutely. No different for us. You never know what's going to happen. A guest may not be able to meet on a given day. Someone, as you said, your co-host got sick. So always planning ahead is what we're trying to do too, as much as we can. As you've gotten into this now, what do you see as the future of the podcast? Kyle, if you were going to look ahead a year down the road, 2 years down the road, what would you like to see for Under the Vinyl?
That's a hard one. I would like to I really want to do live shows at the trade shows. That's the ultimate goal. I think there's a ton of great industry titans who've been in the industry for a long time, who people would sit and listen to for a long time. There's some guys and gals out there who have great stories about the good old days or back in the day. So our main goal this winter is to do a bunch of live shows at trade shows. And I think moving forward, the goal would be to do a lot of that. So at industry events throughout the year, record live shows, because I think it also creates some banter between the audience if you can get some Q&A going and things like that. My hope is that I am able to reach installers and have them come on. And I'd love for one of them to say, hey, I started listening in the beginning and I was just an installer and now I'm a project manager. So 3 years down the road, that'd be the ultimate I've made it kind of moment for me. But that's kind of, I think, where we're headed in the direction.
I'm glad you said that, Kyle. We're actually going to be broadcasting, I guess, live. We're not podcasting. We'll be doing it live. So that's a broadcast from ATA Expo this year in Indianapolis, November 5th through 7th. We don't know, all the details of where and when and whatever, but that's our plan, is to go live. And, we've figured out a couple of methods, I think, that could work for us for that. So we're going to try that. We haven't done it yet, but then also take the bits of that and break it down for our normal flow, where, based on topicality from the guests that we'll talk with, we'll get additional fodder out of it. But looking further down the road, Lori and I have joked before too, like, how cool would this be to make it a full-time job? I don't know that it could ever get there. But, if you're asking what would we want like that, yeah, that's what I would want, like pie in the sky, man. But I think that the future is more interactive somehow. How that manifests itself, I don't know. Whether it's, some of those live things where you have interactivity that goes on the sidebars of a podcast, Twitch streaming. I don't know where it goes, but I think overall, in the future, I would like a little more interactivity somehow, some way. That would be my wish for it.
Yeah, I think like we're all sort of on the same page with that. One of the things we had talked about before was going to mills and to have more of that interaction with the people that are actually there, and that they, that had been sort of a dream to include that, where it's sort of like a engaging textile reporter situation, where we could really interview, and you have firsthand accounts, and people, there's just so many stories, as we said, like right there. And so that could be a really cool thing in addition to the trade shows. And then just as another technical thing, we were just talking about like with audio, is to really in the future, I mean, we do it through Microsoft Teams, which is just, so it would be really cool to be able to just do it where you really have the high level audio, and just kind of take it to the next level from that. So the listening experience is just, I think audio is really important. I mean, we all think that, but to make it increase that aspect, so it's just really high level. But yeah, all of those things. And then maybe just increase frequency. Like we get it to the point where we do have like a weekly podcast, and we have our system, and we have our equipment, and we have the budget to maybe go and travel and stuff. That'd be awesome.
And we started monthly and are now bi-weekly. And as you get going, your editing process becomes better, your flow, your promotional, all the many steps that's involved gets a lot easier. And yeah, I mean, that would be cool to go weekly like Kyle does.
I want to thank everyone for all the insight today, but did anyone have anything else that you think would be important for our listeners to know about your podcast, about doing a podcast? Anything else you'd like to share?
I would say, again, just listen to all the podcasts that are out there. Just if you have a dream to do this, just do it. Just try to do it, and keep going and learn from your mistakes. And I think the more the merrier in this case. Just the more people that are doing textile related podcasts, everyone has a different take on it. So it's like, welcome arms, just come in and do your thing, and we'll all help promote you and promote each other, and just with the goal of getting more people interested in the industry, and just seeing how exciting the industry can be. So that's what I would say.
I would say two things. Don't be a gatekeeper. Information among one is information among all, or I think it should be. The more sharing you get, the more collegial you get. It helps everybody in the industry. And then the next thing I would recommend or I would think about is niche. Like just be focused on your area. I love Kyle's topicality because it's so hyper-focused in his area. And we're all starving for great information. We're all starving for accurate information that we don't have to pay for, and that we don't have to go out of our way for. And a podcast is a really great way of spreading great knowledge, great information, great stories on the listener's time. I really couldn't emphasize more. Be as niche as you think you can be.
It's no secret the textile industry is not a big or well-known industry. So anything anyone can do to get the word out there that this is a great industry to be in, no matter what sector of the industry you're in, is beneficial. So yeah, like Lori was saying, if you want to start a podcast, do it. And if you want help, ask. Or if you have a question, ask any of us. I'm sure Dan would answer a question, Lori, anyone would be happy to help get you going if you had to. What we just need as an industry to promote ourselves, and that's the only way we can do it, is if more and more people are doing it. So that's my advice. Do it if you want to do it. If you want to be a guest, reach out. If you have something that you think one of the hosts on many of the podcasts that the industry has would like, reach out, and I'm sure they'd love to have you.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like everyone, we're always looking for great stories, and As Kyle said, anything we do to promote the industry is wonderful because we're always trying to get people interested in textiles and it doesn't get a lot of attention. Anything people are interested in is always great. Lori, Dan, Kyle, thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated it and enjoyed our discussion, and hopefully people are going to be excited to learn more about all the podcasts out there in the textile industry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan, for having us.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of ATA Talking Textiles. ATA is a not-for-profit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. Learn more about the events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events.